Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The spa and spa life, the SPA, is for seek power always. That power within you to do your deeper work in the world. I am so thrilled to have a special guest today and friend, Anjel B Hartwell. She is known as the Wealthy Life Mentor, is an internationally known artist, author, and listen to this, evolutionary alchemist. I want to hear more about this. She's has been honored to be the Change Movement to Watch award winner and considered one of America's premier experts. She has appeared on multiple times in major media, and she is the creator, executive producer, and host of Apple's #1 internationally ranked A Wickedly Smart Women podcast. You definitely need to listen to this one. And she's also is hired to consult with highly achieving leaders who are called to be the vanguard of the creative age. Anjel, welcome to the show.
Oh, Diane, thank you so much for having me. What a gift and a blessing it is to be here with you today. I'm so grateful.
Oh, my pleasure. It's wonderful. You are one of these evolutionary creatures that you just continue to reinvent yourself as you move into what is being called, you're like this true artist. And I love how you consciously create your life, always looking at that. And I'd love for you to share, what are some of the things that you do to consciously create your life?
Oh, that's such a great question. So, one of the things that I have really come to understand, and it took me, until I was 38 years old when a friend asked me the magical question, what is it that you want? And in that moment, when she asked me that magical question, what is it that you want? That was like a wake-up call for me. Because up until that point in my life, I actually didn't even know that I was allowed to have wants. So, for me, really understanding what's not working and then getting clear on what it is I want in order for my life to start to work even better, like those are the first two steps for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's amazing to actually have this conversation because people think that almost like there's assumption that they know what they want. But if you actually ask that question, I think it stumps a lot of people. People don't give themselves permission to really get clear on what do they want in their life and to be able to actually go for it and make it happen. I know some of the things for you is that you create excitement. How do you do that?
Well, part of my my own wealthy life method, actually, the first step is wake up from what's not working, right? So the awakening often comes from the external, right? The awakening I have found, at least in my own life, either comes from a crisis, a trauma, some kind of external experience that kind of snaps things awake. And from there, we actually have choice. And we don't always know that we have choice. But in my case, I choose repeatedly to step into that unknown space, that place of, well, what is it that I actually want? I know I don't want this, right? I know this is not working. What is it that I actually want? Now I'm in that place of wonder. Now I'm in that place of curiosity. And in that place of wonder and curiosity, I actually want to feel excited. I want to be the chief excitement officer of my company. I want to be the chief excitement officer of my life, right? Yeah. And so part of the work is really, how do we cultivate and continue to nourish our childlike sense of wonder and excitement?
I love that. I love the exploration and the sense of wonder. And I think sometimes there are some elusive words, like people hear like success or wealth. And if you don't define that for yourself, like what does that mean to you? Then, you got to start with that foundation. So I would love to hear, what is your definition of wealth? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, thank you, Diane. And it was one of the things that I actually had a little bit of a hiccup with when I started to step into this place of becoming the Wealthy Life Mentor, so for many people, they hear the word wealth and they automatically associate it with people who have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And what I got clear on is what I'm interested in creating for myself and helping the people that I serve create is a wealthy life by design, to like really be designing a wealthy life. And for me, a wealthy life is it's the sum total of all of the resources that we have available to us. And I've identified them as 5 different resources that are kind of our main resources that we have available to us. And I actually use the word thief to help people to remember, because 95% of the time we are not living our wealthy life by design because we are we're thieving from ourselves in one or more of these areas.
Wow.
So
you're not going to forget that one.
And it's true. We're stealing. So the 5 areas that I have identified where we want to be cultivating our own best relationship with each of these areas in service to creating a wealthy life: our time, right?
Yes.
Our health, our intellect, intuition, imagination, whatever, all of those fall under the I. Intellect, intuition, imagination, idea generation. The E is the energy exchange. And this is where we can talk about the money piece. And so you see, it's only 20% of the wealthy life. Right. The energy exchange is I am making a contribution to the world, and the world is valuing that contribution and providing financial flow and service to that. And then the F is fun with family, friends, and fellows on the journey. So we want to have a cultivating attitude towards all of those areas, that we have permission. We give ourselves permission to stop stealing time in service to making money, or to stop eroding our health in service to, being off in our imagination 24/7, or stop stealing from our friends and family in order to, use our time in ways that it's not productive. So we want to look at the entire realm of all 5 of these resources and be ruthless with ourselves around, ruthlessly honest with ourselves around, how are we stealing? How am I stealing from myself?
Oh, I love this so much. It's kind of throwing me back from when I was on the police department. And, I can remember just, of course, we would get called 911, these emergencies, crisis situations, and people just stealing of their own life, right? Regardless of whatever crime that was associated, how they were in crisis and really taking things away from choosing and being conscious about how it is that they want to live. And so I love this theft about really it's taking from ourselves. It's not standing in our true self. It's not being our true self and looking at that. And, I've even looked at my own evolution of, when I retired from the police department and became an entrepreneur, of really looking at, how did I want to live my life? Asking these questions that you've been saying. And, the top priority for me is being with my people. Like, it is the experience. I had all my family over for the weekend, and it was just so fun to have that. And I have, on my list is having epic health. And I think we forget, if we don't take care of ourselves, if we aren't in that place, then nothing else matters. The time that we create, the health that we have, trusting in ourselves. I love that you really look at these pieces, because if you don't look at them, and I love the order of it as well, because you really have to look at what is truly important to you. How is it at the end of your life? Are you going to say that I felt successful and, to live from this place? So as you created this, you've got a methodology in terms of like having a wealthy life. How are you utilizing these things for yourself and your people?
Yeah. So, the first step is to really discern our readiness, right? Okay. Are we actually ready to have a wealthy life? So one of the things I actually have for your listeners is a quiz, which I can talk about now or we can talk about later, but that's where things start for the people that come in to do this particular body of work with me is, right. We take the quiz and they discern their level. The quiz helps them to discern their level of wealth readiness. And then we we have something to begin with. And so from that, the first step is taking this inventory and looking at what is it that's not working. And again, I have to say that it requires ruthless honesty with ourselves, because so often when we are in things that are not working, not only are we stealing from ourselves, we're also lying to ourselves. And we're saying to ourselves, oh, but I can figure this out, or I can make this work. Or, if I just invest more time in this relationship and try harder to make this guy feel like he's the king, or whatever it is, whatever. Or if I just put more of myself into my business or whatever, oftentimes that's a lie. Oftentimes that is, it is coming from a place of unclarity about what is nourishing to you, and instead coming from a place of cultural, societal, parental, ancestral, or some other kind of conditioning.
Okay. So what would be an example of someone not being ready?
Well, you're not ready for a wealthy life if you are really attached to doing things your way, which your way often is coming from that conditioning, right? It's
which is not really your way. Correct. But you've mentally been programmed to believe it's your way, right? Yes.
So, well, my mother did it X way and it worked for her. And so I'm going to do it X way, just as I'll use myself as an example. I was conditioned to believe that getting all A's in school was going to be the golden ticket, right? Getting all A's in school was going to be the golden ticket. I'm just using my younger self here.
Right. I think we were raised in the same home.
And because I was conditioned to believe that getting all A's in school was going to be my golden ticket, when I graduated a year early. I went to college. When I went to college, I was not equipped to voice when something wasn't working. I was equipped to be focused on and only follow the rules of show up, do the work. If you don't understand it, you have to figure it out because you're the one who's supposed to be smart, right? And so my calculus class in college, they had people teaching who were not English speaking. And so I couldn't understand what they were teaching. And I failed for the first time in my life. And when I failed, I felt all of this shame because I was supposed to, these were the conditions. I was supposed to be an A student, right?
Yeah.
So that's one clue. When you are operating unconsciously because you are following rules that were either handed down to you or that you bought into, and things aren't working, right? So if you are noticing things are not working in your life, then you have to look at, okay, is it time for me to ready myself for things to work better?
Right. Well, and along the same line is how are the ways that people are warding off wealth?
Yeah. Well, so there are 5 ways that women in particular, but people in general also ward off wealth. Okay. And I've discovered these because I've lived them. So one is worry. When we are worried about something, one of the things that I have been gifted with is the capacity to see. And when I use my seeing eyes and I work with somebody who's worried, what I see is this dark, gray, musty smelling old army blanket that's wrapped around them, right? Or around whatever they're worrying about. So if you're worried about money, that's what you're wrapping around your relationship with money. If you're worried about your business, that's what you're wrapping around your business. And wealth is repellent to that. So worry is one of the 5 ways that we ward off wealth. Withdrawal is another way that we ward off wealth. So let's say, for example, somebody is listening to this podcast, Diane, or they go to a live event in the days and times when those return, and they get all excited and they're in that state of excitement about, what's possible for them and the potential that's available for them and the dreams that they've been keeping hidden inside them that are all of a sudden like being illuminated. And then they go back home, or they, turn off this podcast and they pull back in, they pull their energy back in and they withdraw. So that is the second way that we ward off wealth. A third way that we ward off wealth is waiting on. And waiting on two forms. Waiting on could be the form of taking care of everybody else all around you and not taking care of yourself, right? Like Cinderella, right? The other aspect of Cinderella, of course, is waiting on the handsome prince to come and rescue you.
Right. So as soon as someday, when he shows up with my glass slipper and his white horse, right, and his big castle that's off in the sky somewhere. So waiting on is a third way that we ward off wealth. A fourth way that we ward off wealth is waffling. So let's say, for example, you are at a live event, whether it's a virtual or some other kind of live event, and there's an offer for $10,000 to work on your business, to expand your entrepreneurship. And you get the offer, and then it's time for a break, and you go to the ladies' room, and your best friend texts you and says, "Oh my God, you know that thing, that cruise to the Mediterranean that we've been thinking about and dreaming about for years and years and years and years? It's available right now for $10,000. And so now you have to choose between the entrepreneurship or the cruise ship, or the entrepreneurship or the cruise ship, or the entrepreneurship or the cruise ship. And you can't decide, and you can't decide, and you can't decide. And before you know, both ships have sailed." Waffling is a fourth way that we ward off wealth. Great analogy. Then the final way that we ward off wealth is whining. And often whining happens over wine with girlfriends. And when we are whining over wine, what happens there is two things. First, in taking a lot of alcohol actually decreases your consciousness. Mm-hmm. So now you're in a lower level of consciousness and vibration. And the second thing that happens when you're whining in a group is now everyone is colluding. So they are all adding their energy to your complaints rather than adding their energy to your dreams and visions. So whining is the final way that we ward off wealth. Wow, those are so powerful, because you can really look at, the decisions that you make, who you associate with, what kind of things that you're indicators that you're making in looking at that. And when you look at the big picture of your life, what kind of things are you actually making decisions on that you're being conscious about versus default, or you're just letting things happen? And, you're seeing a lot of this now, if anyone's watching this in 2020, where people are relying on so many external, impulses of things that are happening to determine things that we really want to look at from the inside out. Like, who do we want to be? How are we going to show up? Like, what is it, you're going to do? And that's a freedom that we can just always, call upon and actually, come from and share. So I love that you're really having people think deeper to really get clear on what it is that they want to show up as, who they want to be. And sometimes that's a harder question than people anticipated. I mean, what's some of the feedback you're getting from some people that really hadn't looked at their wealthy life from that perspective?
Well, I think a lot of times what happens, Diane, is when I present this to people, there is a part of them, that I wouldn't be in front of them if they weren't ready for it. Like, I just hold that vision for myself. They would not be in front of me if they weren't at some level ready for it. So what often happens when I present this to people is I like to call it skunk medicine, and it's kind of wrapped around my business as skunk medicine. I literally repel people who are not going to be able to move into the work with me, like a skunk. If you come across a skunk and you are walking in the woods, you're going to walk away from that skunk. You're not going to be playing with that.
Keep moving along.
Keep moving along. But on the opposite side of that, skunks love other skunks. They just love other skunks. And it's actually almost a sexual attraction, that odor that skunks have for one another. So I've set up my intention in my business that I'm going to attract other skunks, and we're going to play and have a lot of pleasure with each other. And so the people that are the right fit people for me are just automatically already what I call ripe. They're already in a state of, there's internally, there is some perturbation going on. They know something's not working. They may overtly see that something's not working. And they know that they want support. They know that they require assistance to dismantle some of these things so that they can actually have a level playing field and a blank canvas upon which to get clear on what they want and start painting.
Yes, I love this, which reminds me a lot of times, what keeps people stuck from actually moving through is whatever fear comes up with them. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you move past fear. And, one of the things you had mentioned about using sleep to move past fear. I'm curious about that one.
Well, I actually use dreaming, which is, often people think about it as being asleep, but it's really more about setting aside time in my sleep schedule. So, not following the outside rules that say you should have 5 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep or 8 hours of sleep or 10 hours of sleep, but to really get connected with my own rhythms and cycles and understand what I require for sleep and what I require for dreaming. So what I've discovered with my own self-analysis is that I require a block of time of at least 9 hours to be in both sleep and dreaming. And so often I will sleep for a block of that 9 hours, maybe 6-7 hours of that 9 hours, wake up a little bit, and then go back into the dream time. And when I go back into the dream time, that's when I get either vision and information for my clients, often vision and information for my clients, but also vision and information for myself. And so that having boundaries really is the most important piece of this creating of a wealthy life, and having self-awareness and being clear about what you require is the most important piece of creating a wealthy life by design. So in my life, I have boundaries that I require 9 hours of sleeping, dreaming time in order to be functional, in order to be healthy, in order to be able to serve my clients and serve myself.
Yes. Oh, I love the boundary conversation. People so often, let people ramrod over them. And when you're clear about, looking over like some of the questions that we've already talked about, when you get clear on those questions, then what's the container I want to live my life in, and who do I want to live in, and what do I need to be my best to actually show up for people and be able to look at that. So I love that conscious creation of that, which reminds me, one of the things I always love asking my guests is, we have different experiences in like our bedroom versus our office, our kitchen. What is your favorite room in your home and why?
Ooh, I love that question. I love my kitchen. I love to cook. Cooking is a magical thing for me. In fact, yesterday I spent half of the day in the kitchen. I made shepherd's pie because it's getting cold here in New Hampshire. And I made a spinach and basil farm loaf, and my whole kitchen smelled like garlic and basil and spinach and onions, and like this beautiful loaf that was about, 8 or 10 inches in diameter. And it's magical. You take a bunch of disparate parts and you put them together and you stick some heat under them, and all of a sudden you have nourishment. Is just an amazing thing. And my second favorite room is the bedroom. So
nice. I love that. One of the things I've just had so many, I'm going on 5 years of the show, and I love that question, because where people put their energy and where their spark and where their fun and joy comes in different rooms in their home. And I remember like when I had retired from the department, I was doing a lot of organizing for people because in my work, there was a lot of chaos. And so I helped people bring like more, peace and calm into their space. And what I found was that people when I would ask them what was their least favorite room, a lot of time it was their office because it was either cluttered or papers or things. And so as we're talking about wealth and the things that we're repelling and the things that we allow in our space, it just reminded me about, if this is the, least favored room, but yet you want to expand in your business and your sense of wealth and all of that, it's interesting what we assign value to in our home and what our experiences are in that space. So I thought that was really interesting to see what that was for people and when they showed up in that space. And I know along the line of the journey that people go on, particularly that there's times where we feel like disempowered in our life. As we're going through all these experiences and learning from them. Can you share a little bit about what has been some disempowering moments for you?
Wow, that's a good question, Diane. So I think probably I would say the most disempowering moments for me were when I was in the throes of having my business be, reaching a lot of people and making quite a bit of money. And my home life was just a shit show. And so I felt torn between, making sure that there was enough generating in order for there to be a roof over the head of myself and my son. And at the same time, him going down a really bad journey. And it was interesting because it was reaching its peak around 2015, which was the year that I also was peaking in my business. Financially, kind of in that time frame, I was at a peak point in my business. And I went to an event that was hosted by a woman. Her name is Beth Davis, and she's fabulous. And I got up to the mic and I said, how can I call myself a healer when I can't even heal my own son? And, I was just really in a bad place with him. He was doing a lot of drugs and, involved in a lot of bad things. It was just really difficult and challenging time. And it was a long time, the whole time I was building my business from scratch, he was going down the heroin hole. And it was just really, really hard. And what Beth said to me at that event was, his healing is not your business. And that was probably one of the most healing things for me to be able to hear in that moment. It took me a long time to actually let that settle into my field and get do its magic. Yes. But yeah, that was a really, really difficult time. And I've been in recovery for a number of years since then. And, slowly but surely, and part of the work for me has been getting clear about my own wealthy life by design and creating it, right? So when I came through that rabbit hole, that was the work for me, was to say, oh, that wasn't working. What do I want now instead? Right.
Right. Well, and this is what I love for our audience, because, sometimes we feel like when things aren't working in one aspect of our life, that it becomes this magnifying glass that everything's not working, right? And so we have to look at what are the parts that we are succeeding and know that that is part of the journey, are the parts that aren't working. That's what, where we learn, that's where our experience comes from. And it's important, I believe, for people to hear from successful entrepreneurs that this is part of the journey. Like these, what can feel like steps backward are actually, in hindsight, the things that really, improve our wisdom, trust our intuition, really start looking from those places. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about, in the time that I've known you under 3 different names, like where you've legally changed your name. And I think this is such a fascinating evolution of you. And I'd love for you to share like what each name meant to you and what that journey was about, and how did you know it was time to change to the next name?
Yeah, great. So the first time I changed my name was in 2004. And I had left the real estate industry at the top of my career. I was the national chairperson for my trade association. And I had just, I'd been managing hundreds of millions of dollars in assets and had just finished a project with 2 partners that was multi-million-dollar project. And I had had a spiritual awakening. And the first time I changed my name, I literally received from Spirit in the form of Archangel Michael and Master Jesus and Master Saint Germain. Master Jesus came and put his hands on my head in a meditation and said, "You are amethyst." And as a result of receiving in that way, I knew that I was to change my name legally. So I did. And I became Amethyst Wildfire in 2004. And I spent from 2004 to 2016 as Amethyst Wildfire, embodied as Amethyst Wildfire. And what I knew about that name was I was called to be a healer. And at first I didn't understand what that meant. And when the wildfire piece came in, I got clear. Oh, I'm a healer that it burns out all the dead wood and germinates the latent seeds of potential that are lying within the people that I'm working with. When Emerald Peaceful Green Forest arrived was right at the point of the rite of passage I had with my son, who was down the heroin hole. And we had a flashpoint in 2016, shortly after that event that I talked about with Beth, in May 1st, April 30th, May 1st of 2016, where he actually had locked me in the basement and threatened to cut me up in little pieces when I confronted him for ordering heroin and fentanyl online. And he had been he was taking something, who knows? It was beyond, at that point, he was even beyond the heroin piece. He was taking everything. And it was just this moment where I finally confronted and said, yeah, no, I can't leave you alone. And then that was putting the match to the flame. And so I thankfully was able to escape, and Officer Friend got me out of the forest. And 3 days later, I hear coming up, I'm in meditation again, and this time it came up from below, and it literally felt like this came from the earth. And I heard, "You're Emerald now." And I was like, what? I'm Emerald now on top of all of this catastrophe that just happened in my life. I'm Emerald now. Okay. And so the next day I was like, am I Emerald Wildfire? Or do I have a new last name? And then I heard, Green Forest. And then I heard my middle name was Peaceful. And by day 3, I was at the court changing my name because that's what I do. I follow the guidance. And so I was Emerald Peaceful Green Forest starting in 2016 until this year. And this year, I just got to the point where I was like, there are certain things that are not working. They're not working. And I ended up seeing a therapist who I had worked with in the past. And the therapist, I specifically went to see the therapist to just clear up and heal and reset from the night in the basement, to just reset that trauma. Even though I had done a ton of work, it just felt like there was a part of me that was still in the basement from that night. And while we were working together, she said, you changed your name at the same time. Have you ever done numerology on that name? And I said, no, I did not do numerology on it. I just listened and followed the instructions and went and changed my name. And so when I got done with that session, I went and did the numerology, and come to find out the name Emerald Peaceful Green Forest was lousy for health. It was lousy for money for me. It was lousy for support for me. It was just lousy for all of these parts. It was lousy for relationship for me. And I said, well, I don't need to suffer. I don't need to suffer. And so I went through the process with this organization. They create a balanced name for you. Yes. And I went, and they're called the Caballarians. So I went through this whole process. And when I got the balanced name report, I had 40 options. And so this time I consciously selected it wasn't something that came in from above. It wasn't something that came up from below. It was me making a conscious choice saying, well, I don't need to freaking suffer. Let me choose a name that's going to work. And literally within 10 days of changing my name, I had, new clients come in. everything just has started to become easier and easier. Every day is just easier and better. And even when some like weird blip shows up on the radar screen, it's like, it's okay. I can navigate that.
Yes. Yeah. I
so
love
that's
that.
my
I love
main
that
story.
Listening to like what's true for you, right? And knowing like, okay, that time has passed. And there's such an amazing analogy in that about people looking at their life, like knowing, right? This is part of that trusting, that inner knowing of yourself, of when it's time to, this is back to the boundaries, right? When's it time to stop something? When's it time to go in a different direction? When's it time to move through that? So I love that how you just like listen to that and you just act on it and move forward. And I think that's amazing. And I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. So I'd love for you, we will have this in the show notes as well, but if you want to share like the quiz and how they can stay connected with you, that would be great too.
Yeah, so they can go to quiz.wealthylifementor.com and that will give them their wealth readiness information. And I'd love to have people also tune into my podcast, Wickedly Smart Women. We just won the 15th Annual Podcast Awards People's Choice Award in our category. And so, Wickedly Smart Women you can listen to on any place that you listen to podcasts. Or on my website. So if you go to Quiz Life Mentor, that's the place where I'd really like to invite you to go if you've resonated with anything that we talked about today.
Yes, I love that. And, this year we are focusing on our guests who are being a force for good. And I'd love for you to share how you're being a force for good in the world.
Oh, well, one of the things that I do love to do is I love to take a percentage of the profits from my business and support the Life is Good Playmakers Foundation, and they are dedicated to helping frontline childcare workers to restore play into the lives of children who have had trauma. So that's one of the ways that I'm a force for good, and just showing up and having fun is another way that I'm a force for good. So those are my two ways today.
I love it. I love that you have fun in that, because I think sometimes we think of our impact in life as like, a very serious thing. I mean, we have a percentage of our company that goes to charity, and that is such a filling thing that we have. But when we look at how we want to live our life and where's like the fun and the excitement and the people we're with, like all of those aspects, it's so important, I believe also for our listeners to hear that aspect of what it is that brings joy to our life and what happens. So any final words before we wrap up?
My final word is I am just in gratitude. And I believe that gratitude is the currency of the universe, and currency is gratitude in actions. So thank you again, Diane, for hosting me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm so grateful for the platform, and I just really appreciate what you're doing in the world as well. I'm excited to have you on Wickedly Smart Women.
Me too. I can't wait. And it's just always wonderful to be with you. And I just thank you for doing that. And I also want to thank our listeners, right? Because you are the reason we're here. You get to be part of the community. When you share this, when you give us that great 5-star rating and subscribe, it really does help have positive media in the world. And that's what we want. We want you to be part of the conversation. If you have any questions from the show, make sure that you tag both Angel and myself. We're happy to answer any questions that you have and be included in that. So until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye, everyone.